What's going on, everybody? It's your boy C-Zar, and we are talking about Bitcoin Cash. Shout out to the Dragon Riders in the House of the Dragon. I've got an idea. I'm going to paint a story, a picture. I'm going to take you guys for a ride. If that sounds good, hit the like button, subscribe. Let's do it. I feel like this is a bit, let's say, out there. It's not a traditional form of analysis, right? But it's kind of based in things that are. So just bear with me. I'll show you what I mean. Okay, so let's look at the 4 hour. It all stems from here. In my opinion, it all stems from here. I was looking at this earlier and just talking to myself about it, and I've strongly believed that we were going to go to 20K by the end of this cycle for over a year now, right? I've been believing that for quite some time. It makes sense to me. To a lot of you, I think it makes sense also. I know it at least makes sense for a lot of you that we're going to see new all-time highs. Some people don't think that we're going to get anywhere near 20K. Teach their own, that's okay. This might seem like, I don't know, poppycock. I don't know what word to use. This might seem silly to you, but I feel like this is well thought out, and it's a sequence of events that corresponds with the previous sequence to go to the next sequence. It's just all an idea. We are in May. It's May 23rd of 2024. I'm going to be projecting out for more than a year's time from now. So there's a whole lot of time that has not been filled yet. I am doing a lot of assuming, but just bear with me. I hope it seems like an educated guess. That's what I think it is. But let's assume this is an Adam and Eve pattern here on the 4 hour. For Adam and Eve patterns, it all stems from here, from this 4 hour. We're gonna project out over a year's worth of price action from literally this 4 hour pattern right here. Okay, just bear with me. It'll make sense as we go. Again, hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't. If this is an Adam and Eve pattern, and to me it looks like it is. Generally, Adam and Eve patterns are more of like double bottoms, not higher lows, but they can be higher lows, and you can even have a lower low. So it looks fine to me, and you're getting the reaction for sure. This was your like focal point, and you actually broke out of it, back tested it for support. This happens often enough with Adam and Eve's also, just kind of validating, in my opinion, that this is a pattern of what looks to be respected, at least. If not, it's just a coincidence, but whatever. Let's get the measure move. Let's get the measure move, because this is where the idea starts rolling, right? For the measure move, you take the low part of the pattern to the focal point there. The breakout of that measure move would be right there, right? So your measure move would take you all the way up to about $614, $613, okay? That's the number. That's where your measure move would take you. Okay, you do not have to hit your measure move. You can exceed it, you can fall short of it. It's not a requirement, it's an idea, right? But based on the current trajectory, if we were to get there, and I don't care that we've broken this line. I've looked at this already. I don't care that we've broken this line. I think we're fine. All in all, I actually think that this bounce here is nice. I'm going to go over that at the end of this video, but I want to stay on track here, okay? I'll go over the short-term stuff at the end of the video if you want to skip ahead for the short-term stuff, but we're going to go over, we're writing a story right now, okay? Based on this trajectory, assuming that, you know, whether we go below it or above it, we stay somewhat on par with this, we could see that price by the end of this month, literally by the 30th of May. So we'd be above $600 by the end of this month if we continue on this path, right? Assuming that. Looking at the daily, and I think that's important to note because, oh, come on now. Come on, buddy, there we go. We take the relative high to low of this entire consolidation phase we've been in. We just broke above the 382. We found support on it. That is a classic kind of behavior whenever you're talking about moving to your 618, 69 zone. Now, I know there's 3 lines in here. It might be a little bit confusing. It actually confused me even because I didn't even draw it. I drew it above the 618, 69. This is your 618, 69 zone. The white line above here, that was your measure move of the given pattern, right? So generally, with this kind of behavior that you're showing on the 382, if we can get today to close green and we can continue to grow, this is all assuming, right, that we continue to grow, and I think we will. But again, I'll go over that at the end of the video. We would go to this target area, but the measure move itself is actually above this target area. What happens whenever you break the 618 on the first attempt? That provides a likelihood that you're going to see the extensions of the given range, the expected extension area, relatively soon, right? If you break it on the first attempt, you can do anything. You could come back down here, you could mess around, like anything can happen, but generally speaking, in my experience, when you break above the 618 on the first attempt, especially the first attempt, you're not just likely to go here, but you're likely to go there faster than slower, if that makes sense. So assuming that we're going to maintain this same trajectory, potentially, okay, from low to low there, if we were to hit the measure move of the Adam and Eve pattern, that would break us above the 618, which would then imply that we are on course for the extensions to be hit a lot sooner than I thought. That'd mean $844 to $1,035 could be happening not in July or August, but in June or July, right? It could be happening earlier. This line intersects here in the middle of June, a little bit past the middle of June at $844. The 1618, the maximum expected fib target, is literally right at the end of June. So essentially what that is saying is by the end of June, we could be at $1,000. Now let's roll with this, all right? I want to focus on this idea real quick, all right? And this all stems from that. I hope it all makes sense as to how we got here. But I want you to really think about, if none of this makes sense, I'm sorry. I don't know how to make it more clear. I'm trying. I really am, but sometimes I'm bad with my words, but think about this part. This part at least you can maybe make sense of. I want you to think about what it would mean if Bitcoin Cash was at $1,000 in price by the end of June. And if not by the end of June, maybe sometime in July. What would that mean if by the end of June or sometime in July of this year, 2024, Bitcoin Cash is at $1,000? That would mean that we have five to 6 months left in the year, right, to grow. Okay. 5 to 6 months left in the year to grow. Okay, that's cool. We're at $1,000. We have 5 to 6 months left to grow. That sounds pretty cool. How much could we grow in 5 to 6 months? 100%? 200%? 300%? How much could we grow? 10,000%? I doubt 10,000, but let's just see what we've done for reference sake. Let's see what we've done in the beginning of this whole year, right? If we're assuming, here's the beginning of the year from the lowest point there. Okay, we're assuming that we're going to be at $1,000 by June, based on this, right? By the end of June, so maybe in the beginning of July or the end of June, right there, perfect. $1,000 would be all the way down here. There we go. Come on there. And actually, the 1618 was a little bit higher than that. We'll keep it right there at about 1,000. Yeah. So that's at the beginning of July, the first week of July there, the very end of June, the first week of July. Assuming that we hit 1,000 around that time, we would see 371% in growth from the low point to potentially the high point of the year so far. Again, assuming that we're about 6 months into the year, maybe at the most 7 months, if we were to hit $1,000 by the end of June or sometime in July. So if we did that, if we grew 370% in the first 6 to 7 months, if we're at $1,000, what does that mean for Bitcoin Cash for the rest of the year? What could we do with another 5 to 6 months? If in 6 to 7 months we did 371, what could we do with 5 to 6 months? I would assume that we could at least do half that. But let's be pessimistic. Let's say we only do 100%. Let's say we get to 1,000. This is all assuming again, right? We're painting a picture. It hasn't happened yet, but let's just assume. This is all based off of things that to me make sense based off the pattern, and now we're just projecting out. So if we're at $1,000 by June, let's say we only grow for the rest of the year, only grow 100%. And I don't need to tell you 1,000 plus 100% would be 2,000. I don't need to tell you that, but that's that there. Okay, here's the beginning of 2025 / the end of 2026. Okay, so potentially by the end of the year, we could be at $2,000. Now, based off of what we've seen, I think it would be more likely that we'd be above that target. If we hit $1,000 in June to July, I think and we've seen this growth already this year, I think it'd be more likely, based on the trajectory that we have, based on the amount of growth we're seeing and the amount of time that we're seeing it, that we would be above this number. But let's be pessimistic and assume that we're at $2,000 by the end of the year. Which to me, that's not pessimistic. I thought we were going to be lower than that by the end of the year, but just going off of this, it makes sense to me. I hope it's making sense to you. If we're at $2,000 by the end of the year, I'm going to ask the same question that I asked back here. What does that mean for Bitcoin Cash? If we're at $2,000 by the end of the year, what does that mean? If you look back at the previous cycles, when does Bitcoin Cash do its best work, right? I mean, obviously this came out toward the end of the cycle, so that's not really fair, but hey, that is the most bullish it's ever been, and it just so happens to be at the end of a cycle. The most bullish, the most growth we saw in the shortest amount of time was at, yes, you guessed it, the end of the cycle. So assuming that the end of the cycle, if you're on board with me in thinking that the end of the crypto cycle is going to happen in 2025, which I think it will, I think it's going to happen at the end of 2025. But whether you think it's midway of 2025, end of 2025, whatever, sometime in 2025, I do think it's going to be in the second half personally. I'm thinking October, somewhere around there. It could be earlier, but if you're at $2,000 by 2025, that would then imply that from the beginning of the year of 2024 to the end of the year, you grew a total of 858%. Now that's awesome. 858% in a year is amazing. What did you do last cycle? What did you do last cycle? From the beginning of 2020, right? Because 2020 was the halving year. The lowest point, we'll go to the lowest point, which this isn't really fair because it was the COVID crash, but we're going to do that, right? Because all this is 2019, so it wouldn't count. So from the lowest point of 2020 to the highest point of 2020, how much did you grow? That's the last week. I would assume some of that's actually in 2021. You know what? Let's be legit with this, okay? Let's do this to a T real quick here. We'll come back. I know I'm jumping all over the place, but I promise you it'll make sense, or at least I hope it will. 28. So this was your high, right? Because this move here, this happened in very early January of 2021. So for the year of 2020, from the lowest point to the highest point, you had a range of 185%, okay? 185%. From the low point of, oops, that's not what I meant to do. From the next year, from the low point of 2021, which would have been here. Nope, that's still 2020. So it would have been here. Low point of 2021 to the high point of 2021, you saw an overall growth, come on now, of 391%. Not only did you see it bigger growth by about double, actually, you saw it in a dramatically shorter amount of time, right? Look at how much thinner that is. It's about half the amount of time that you saw twice the amount of growth. Just illustrating that the last part of the bull cycle is the most bullish part. It's the part that we see the most growth. It was volatile. We went up, we went down. We saw 40% drops all along the way, but it was the most growth we saw in the shortest amount of time. Okay, going back to the main point now. Going back to this stuff over here. Okay, what does it mean if we are at $2,000 by the end of this year, by the beginning of 2026? What does that mean? Well, it would mean that we see a 858% growth from the lowest point of this year to potentially the highest point of this year, 858%, based off of what we've seen and what is generally true for any cycle, that you tend to be the strongest at the end of the cycle. And if not the strongest, you still show a lot of strength at the end of the cycle. Maybe you're the strongest in the beginning of the cycle, and then, like, this is the beginning, but that was a different year. That was 2023. Maybe you do have a stronger move in the initial beginning, but nonetheless, I think that we can all agree that most cycles finish on a bang. Most of them do, at least bull cycles, maybe not bear cycles. This bear cycle finished on a slumber, but bull cycles finish on a bang, right? If we are going to assume that we finish on a bang again, I would assume that we would probably see greater than 858% of a growth. Well, what would that mean if we're at $2,000? Let's put that bottom number all the way at $2,000 there. There we go, 2,049. Let's bring it close. Let's try to be super exact. Well, that would mean that if we were to see the same amount of growth in 2025, that the price of Bitcoin Cash would be at $19,000. Okay, now here's the catch to that. For 2024, I think it's safe to assume that we will grow throughout. We're not going to top off in 2024, right? We'll have highs and lows, but we're not going to top off in 2024. We will top off probably, in my opinion at least, based on the analysis I've done and my, just historical evidence in the charts throughout Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. For crypto, it would make sense that we do top off sometime in late 2025. But the thing is, again, here's the thought, is that this measurement would account for the whole year of 2024, where we will not have the whole year of 2025 to grow. We will see the strongest amount of growth, like we will see a higher rate of growth in a shorter amount of time in 2025, but we won't have the whole year. So I'm just saying we might we might not do what we did last cycle, where we went from 184 to 391, where we essentially did double the growth in half the time. I don't think we're going to grow 16,000 or 17,000% in 6 months' time. I don't think that's what's going to happen, right? I mean, we could. I mean, technically, we could. That would put us up at 38,000. I'm sure we would all love that, but I don't personally think that's going to happen. Let's just keep it at the idea of we're on par with this. Okay, 858% for a year's time. Now, being that you won't have a year's time in 2025, because you likely will find, I think we likely will find our high before Q4 of 2025, if not the very beginning of Q4 in 2025. I do think it'll be Q3 or Q4 that we find it. I'm thinking October. I guess that would be the beginning of Q4, but it could be earlier than that. If we saw the same percentage growth overall, but in less time, then that would equal growing at a faster rate, right? So if we saw it didn't take us a year, where this year it could potentially take us a year to see this price, this amount of growth. If next year it takes us less time to see that amount of growth, it's a faster rate of growth. $19,316. Why does that sound so familiar? What? I swear I've seen this before. I swear I have. Let's go back in time and see. No, not on this chart. Maybe it was somewhere. Maybe it was somewhere else. Maybe it was here. What was this? Wow, $19,800. The top of Bitcoin in 2017, when it came from prices that were at about $160, and at the time of its halving in July, it was at a high point of about $700. That's 700 and actually it went all the way up to 789. 789 at the halving point. Okay. What's odd about that is Bitcoin Cash hit a high of about $713 around the halving for Bitcoin Cash and for BTC of this cycle. What's crazy is that 20K, it's not crazy. Like, that's what's crazy, is that it's not crazy. Why is it not crazy? We've seen this before. Not only that, based off of, you can throw that in the trash that we've seen this before. I'm just pointing out that it sounds familiar. This price area sounds familiar because of Bitcoin. I do think we're going to go above that. But this is all based off of if we were to see the same rate of growth that we see this year for next year by the end of the cycle. Okay, not the same rate of growth, the same percentage growth. Overall, the rate of growth would likely be increased. If we take the all-time high, I hope this is making sense. I feel like I kind of sound like a madman, but at this point, I don't really care. I'm going to complete the thought, and we're just going to go for it. And then I'll do the short-term analysis, I promise you guys. High to low here. That would put us in between our 1272 and our 1414. Me being the technical analyst I am, I've been doing this for over 7 years, and I've seen this plenty of times. We could absolutely stop in between the 1272 and the 1414, but likely if you get this close to it, I would just assume that you go to it. It's more common to top off just above a line than like really close under it. It does happen, don't get me wrong. There are times where you reach for your 1618, but you just don't quite get there. You reach for your 1272, you just don't quite get there. But it's less common, in my opinion, to stop like right in the midway point, or like it could happen that we stop at 19K. But what's funny about this 23K number is if we take the all-time high to all-time low, that's where the 1414 is. If we take the cycle high, the previous cycle's high to the previous, or to the current cycle low, the 1886 of that cycle lines up exactly, like it lines up very, very well with that. It's at 22.1K where this is at 23.2K. It's about $1,000 off, but those lines are basically on top of each other, right? So that would imply then a growth by the time of the cycle high. That would imply a growth of 1,000%. Okay, 1,000% going from 858% to 1,000%. That's not that big of a stretch in my opinion, especially considering that we doubled the growth in half the amount of time last cycle. I'm not even asking for that this time, right? I feel like that makes sense. And we're stronger. We've actually seen more volume this cycle. We've seen stronger readings this cycle. We're doing things versus the Bitcoin Cash to BTC chart that we've never done before, and we will potentially keep doing that. All this just implies, in my opinion, that if we can see $1,000 by the end of June, sometime in July, if this Adam and Eve plays out and we break $600, we break that 618 of the relative fib range right here, right? If we can break the 618 of this high to low, being that the measure move of this pattern would take us above that on the first attempt, that would give us the green light to anywhere from $844 to $1,035. And that lines up with the current trajectory we have. That lines up with the end of June to the beginning of July, but likely the end of June. If we have a whole half of year, we're at $1,000. We have a whole half of a year to go. Can we, at the bare minimum, see a 100% growth? Where from that point in time, from the beginning of the year of 2024 to the point in time that I'm projecting out at $1,000, that would only be half a year that we would see 370%. Could we see, if we saw 370% in the first half of the year, could we just see 100% in the second half of the year? I think we could. Again, this is all assuming that we could be at $2,000 or higher by the end of the year. And then going off of the driving factor that if this year saw 800 and something % in growth, could next year see, by the time we find our high, the same amount of growth, if not more? And I think it could. I really do think it could, because that's kind of common with cycles, is that they get stronger toward the last part of the cycle, which we're definitely not in right now. It just makes sense to me, guys, that we are going to see 20K by the end of this cycle. That's all I'm trying to say. I don't know how to wrap this up. I feel like I'm just going to keep going in circles if I keep saying it over and over again, but it wouldn't even be crazy, in my opinion, if we went higher than that, because this $19,000 number, this all comes from, I got to go way back. Let's go way back. This all comes from the idea that we're only at $2,000 by the end of this year. I say only, but that we're at $2,000 by the end of this year. And that $2,000 number came from the idea that where the first 6 months we saw a 370% growth, the second 6 months we only see a 100% growth. Let's say we see a 150% growth. Well, 150% would mean we're at 2,500. 2,500 would then mean that 858% would put us at $24,000. That'd be a little bit above the 1414. You know what I mean? Let's say by the end of the year, on this relative fib, from the relative cycles high to low, we're not at whatever that number would be, $2,500. We're at the 1272 or around there. That would give us a potential target of $33,000 by the end of the year, right? Based on the same amount of growth that we would potentially see this year. 19,000, that first number, was stemmed from, in my opinion, a pessimistic outlook on the price for the end of the year. When I went on the Bitcoin Cash podcast, shout out to the Bitcoin Cash podcast if you guys are watching. If you're not, still shout out to them. I watched all the episodes on the Bliss conference, which I think anybody should do. It's fun. I find that stuff awesome, and I like listening to that conference. I got a kick out of it, but I'm getting off track here. Whenever I was on their podcast, I said 1,700 was where I could see Bitcoin being by the end of the year. But I said I'd rather have a range, and I said between 1,700 and 3,700 would be my range. It's looking more likely, in my opinion, that we really could be not just above 1,700, but potentially above 3,000 by the end of this year. The higher we are by the end of this year, the closer to that 20K target we are by the end of this year, the easier it will be to grow to that next year. And I don't think we're going to top off in the very beginning of next year. I don't think it's going to be the midway point. I do think it'll be in the later part of next year. Maybe as early as like June or July. I don't expect that, but I am thinking October. Maybe August to October is what I'm thinking. And it could be later. If it's later, that'd be great as well. But let's do the short-term analysis. I feel like I'm just rambling at this point. Let's get into this, and then I'll wrap it up. Okay, so we're at $508 right now. We've gone down. We've dropped $1 since I started talking about this. Okay, what we've done recently, right, from our relative high to low here, is we have gone up to our 1414. Hey, that 1414 is being respected even on the short-term time frames. I wonder if it's respected on the long terms, the macros, because if it is, then we're going to 23K. High to low, you hit that expected area and did something that's very classic, at least in my analysis, is that you back tested the 100 to the 886 area. And the fact that you tipped the 100 and then had a very positive reaction with positive volume, you bullishly engulfed basically all of yesterday's bearish price action in just one candle with more volume than all of yesterday's price action. I'm very confident that's your low, not only based on the fibs, but based on the fact that this was previous resistance, previous support even, right? If I put a line right here, right there, resistance, 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 support, resistance, a little bit of support right there, a little bit of support right there. I wonder if we go back, resistance, kind of resistance in that area. I'm not going to go back further than that, but just somewhat of a significant area that we just found support off of, and we had a positive reaction. If we look at the 4 hour, you've had a low, 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 lower lows, 4 lows, 3 lower lows, and all you've had is higher lows. That means you are cooling off while simultaneously building structure. This is a very bullish formation that you're in right now. It looks really good for more or less immediate movements up. This is on the 4 hours. So when I say immediate, I mean today, tomorrow, throughout the rest of the week, right? And we could move up. We're at 508. We could move up only to like 530 or 540, 550. You know, maybe we only move up to 520. We don't have to move up like this for the rest of the week. It can just be, you know, slowly but surely, just like working your way up. I don't know how it's going to look. Maybe we move sideways for all I know. But I'm very confident we don't go below this line. I don't think we're going to go below 495. I think that was the low. It's like the minimum of what I've been calling for. I have for the past 2 days been saying that we were probably going to pull back, and we did. Today, I want to say I think that was it. I don't think we're going lower. If we do, cool. That 460 to 465 target is still on the table, absolutely. But I don't think we're going to, I mean, even down to 450 is possible, I suppose. But after today, after tomorrow, if price grows the way I think it's going to grow, this area down here will just become a lot less likely. Okay. And then we go back to our relative fibs here from the overall move, the overall consolidation phase we're in, relative high to low. We've broken above the 382. We're finding support on it now. This kind of maneuver is very common when working your way up to your 61869. So the next target, in my opinion, would be 570-ish to $600. That's the next target. Pair that with the fact that we have this Adam and Eve down here. The measure move of that would actually be at about this price, $614. That would imply that we break above the 618. So if our next target zone, let's just say roughly, is maybe between the 786 to the 618, because oftentimes when you break the 618, I look for that 786. Because this is Bitcoin Cash, I kind of look for that 69, but we do have the measure move that's above that. So let's just say 786 to 618 is your next target area. I would assume that either by the end of this month, if not the very beginning of June, we would be in that area. We would be above $600. And if we get a positive reaction with the 618 on the first attempt, that would imply that these targets are not just likely, but they're likely to happen soon. And this is on the daily. So soon would mean over the coming weeks after the fact. Not from here. I mean, it could mean over the coming weeks from here, but over the coming weeks after we positively react with this zone. Over the coming weeks to potentially like a month to 2 months, you know, something like that. So essentially, all that to say, the immediate targets that I'm looking for are between 570 to 634, and I am specifically looking at that 600 to 634 area more so than I am the 570 area. I do think we're going to break above the 618 on the first attempt, which I don't normally call for, but I am calling for it on this one just because of the measure move of the underlying pattern that we just broke out of. Potentially, if it's there. If not, you know, whatever. We'll go from it. We'll figure it out as we go. But if we have that positive reaction, if this is phase one, we have a positive reaction here. Phase two is up here. And that would be at $844 to $1,000. And we would likely see those prices based on the current trajectory by the end of June, if not very early July, which is a lot earlier than I have been calling for. I've been saying that we wouldn't break these highs until July or August. Now I'm saying not only are we going to break this high before July, but we'd be up here potentially before July as well. Be at $1,000 by July. I don't know. That's the wrap, guys. I hope it makes sense. I hope I didn't sound too mad. Maybe just a little bit of mad. We all need that in our lives sometimes. But the daily RSI looks very bullish. The 4-hour RSI looks like it wants some right now. The 1-hour RSI also looks like it wants some. Getting overbought, no problem. Staying above the 50, no problem. You got below the 50 here, you've been hanging out, but guess what? You're hanging out above that 123 moving average. You had a very positive candle right here. You're actually holding support right at previous areas of support and previous areas, relative areas of resistance on the 1-hour time frame. And you just look good. You look really good bouncing off the overbought zone like that and being around the bullish area of control now. I think we're going to move up, guys. I'm very confident that this was the low, the relative low of this move. It's not a low at all, actually, but it's just like a higher low in this move, I suppose, this little wiggle waggle. And I think we're working our way up to the next phase, which again would be around 570 to 630, but I don't even think we're going to mess with that 570 area. In the more like immediate term, like over the next day, maybe 540 to 550, maybe even 577. But over the next few days, over the next week or two, I would assume we will be above $600. And that's all I got to say. If you like the video, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to see more. I said that's all I got to say, but I do want to look at the BCH BTC chart real quick. So for those of you who didn't get psyched out by my farewell, let's do this here. 0.007. Man, I feel like I just went on a rant. I hope I don't sound crazy. I really hope. If I do, I'll just I don't know, man. I'll probably just have to sound crazy. Dude, we did it, man. We bounced right off the 50. We did it. I'm pretty sure yesterday I was asking for this exact thing, and we did it. Didn't we? Oh, no, I wasn't asking for that, no. Because I was asking for us to be green. Well, hey, we stayed on the 50. Okay, so if we can close green today, that's when we'd get our bounce off the 50, an area that we found resistance on recently, in fact. So that'd be really nice if we could close today green. If we can close today green, that would mean that we're potentially working our way up to the 382. If we can have a positive reaction with that, that's the building block. That's the beginning of potentially sending us up to a higher high. And if we get that higher high, man, BCH versus BTC, is this the right chart? Am I looking at it right? Oh, that's why. We would form our first higher high, higher low. And I think this all just, when it comes to fruition, we're not there yet, but when we get our higher high, I think this will all come together in showing that this cycle is different, right? We've done nothing but go down versus Bitcoin since Bitcoin Cash's inception. If we have our first certified, definable uptrend versus Bitcoin, I think it becomes a lot less deniable that Bitcoin Cash is about to have its most bullish bull cycle that it's ever had in its existence, which isn't that long of an existence, to be fair. Longer than most cryptos, but still not that long of an existence. But we're about to have a reckoning, man. We're about to have a reckoning to the bears. They're going to get wrecked. The most bullish move, the highest reading on the weekly RSI, came out of the low from this cycle here. That low from this cycle on the BCH BTC chart came from this last little pivot, this last significant pivot, right? You can see it where I'm drawing it from, right? This low to high versus like anything here. Like this is the most significant divot, in my opinion, up until this point here. From that low to high, we bounced right at the 1618. Yes, we wicked below it a little bit, but really what we did was we held this area. That's a very significant area to find your low at. We're still respecting it, holding the 1414. We're looking productive right now, crowding the 886. When we break above that, you guys, it's on. And when we do have that, when we have that certified uptrend versus Bitcoin, I think it just becomes a lot less deniable, incredibly less deniable, that Bitcoin Cash is going to do anything less than achieve new all-time highs, okay? And if it achieves new all-time highs based on the way that I do analysis, from the all-time high to the all-time low, because that's the move off of this. This would be the fib that we're still respecting. Look, hey, we're still respecting it here. Look, 382 resistance, 236 here. We found support on the 382 right here. We're still showing respect to it. So I would assume if we break the high, we would show respect to it. The minimum target would be 13K. The 1414 would be 23K. We could see 53K by the end of this year, or by the end of this cycle. I would love to see that. I don't think we will, but I'm not gonna. I'm not going to bet against it either. I'm not going to close the door to that idea either. But I am at this point in time focused on this 23K level, and it just makes a lot of sense to me. I hope it makes a lot of sense to you. And with that, I leave you. So take care, guys. I'll see you on the next one. This video is brought to you by the ravings of a madman. So take care, Dragon Riders. We fly soon. We fly very soon. Get saddled up, man, because when this thing goes, it ain't going to stop. You try to grab that dragon by the tail, you're going to get burned. So get set, get ready. Let's go, man. Things are looking really good. Bye-bye.